Hello students and welcome to Royal Palace PU College Jamkhandi online classes. Dear students, as you all know that we are in the chapter of biodiversity and conservation, that is in PUC second year, and this is the last unit of it, that is ecology. In the previous video of us, we studied about the biodiversity loss. Why actually there is a loss and what are the different reasons for the biodiversity loss. Since that's been discussed in the previous video, now my dear students, today is the topic wherein which we will discuss about what are the biodiversity conservation reasons. First of all, what is the meaning of biodiversity conservation? Why do we need this conservation? And how actually we can do this conservation process? And along with that, in the end, what and all was happening or was happened or had happened in our biodiversity related topic. Okay students, come on. Without wasting our time, let us jump into these particular topics and try to understand them one by one. Coming to the first thing, that reasons for biodiversity conservation. First basic question is that what do you mean by biodiversity? Second thing, what do you mean by biodiversity conservation? And third thing, what are the reasons for the biodiversity conservation? First thing, once again repeating the same word, and that is biodiversity. The presence of wide variety of plants throughout the planet Earth is called as biodiversity. The presence of wide variety of animals throughout the planet Earth is called as biodiversity. The presence of different life forms present throughout the planet Earth is called as biodiversity. Now the question is biodiversity conservation. Since the human, for his selfishness, for his own reasons, for his own beneficial economical reasons, he is making the colonization, he is making the urbanization, he is improving the industrialization, and because of overpopulation, there is a loss of biodiversity. It is increasing day by day, month by month, and year by year. By happening of this particular increased in the concentration of biodiversity loss, we have already lost so many species also. We call those lost species as the extinct species, and even so many species are in the verge of losing their existence once again. So in one or the other way, these species are important to us. In one or the other reasons that we need to take care of these particular species. So it is our moral duty, and there should be some particular reasons. That's why these biodiversity and different species should be there in our planet Earth. That's why the topic conservation means saving of all these organisms in our life, saving all these organisms in our planet Earth, so that every organism becomes a part of this living planet Earth. Coming to the topic, what are the different reasons for the biodiversity conservation? To begin with, let me tell you, dear students, that whatever that I am going to tell you, all these are the selected and entitled lines from the NCERT textbook. So whatever that is present in front of you as a video in the form of slide, it covers the entire NCERT content. All my videos cover the entire NCERT content. So there will be some stages wherein which I explain a lot, and there will be some stages wherein which I say that this is for the reference purpose, and this is for underlining purpose, and this is for our remembering purpose. Okay, come on, let us enter into those particular reasons and coming to those points. And this one, first of all, there are three main reasons. What and all those three main reasons? First reason is that narrowly utilitarian arguments. Okay, first thing, narrowly utilitarian arguments. Second one, broadly utilitarian arguments. And the third but not the least is called as the ethical reasons. Let me repeat it again. First one, narrowly utilitarian arguments. Second one, broadly utilitarian arguments. And third one, ethical reasons. Okay, so if we understand about the first sentence called as narrowly utilitarian arguments, it is just one argument, it is one discussion which is happening between the human and the nature. And it says that this ecosystem, this nature is giving us, providing us some utilities, some benefits. And these benefits are in the form of less required, in the form of regularly required, in the form of must and should required, and in the form of it is our moral duty type of requirement. I repeat, in those particular reasons, the first one is called as the narrowly utilitarian arguments. Let us understand what are those basic discussions and what are those points which we need in our day-to-day life and which are given by our nature or our ecosystem so that the biodiversity can be conserved. Like that, in the first section, if we think about it, that is, human beings derive direct economic benefits from the nature. We get food, we get firewood, we get fiber, we get construction material, we get industrial products and medicinally important products. Whatever the products, whatever the points, whatever the requirements, whatever the utilizations that are here, these are somewhat are required to us in our daily basis. Without these things, it may not be possible for us to survive. We are directly or indirectly connected to these utilities or these useful points. Such as the first point says as a food. Food, you can consider that as a vegetarian section, non-vegetarian section. The human beings are dependent on the vegetables, and some of the human beings being non-vegetarian, they are dependent on animals. Being vegetables means these are the chief producers of our nature. And so many organisms, I must say that the entire planet Earth is dependent on these plants. So in the form of cereals, in the form of vegetables, in the form of so many aspects, the plants as a source of food are required to us. And those organisms which eat these things, such as we need the non-vegetarian, that is, we are dependent on animals also for their meat, for their egg, for their milk, etc., as a source of food. And we are even interested and we are even based our life with respect to firewood also. Even in India and considering so many other countries, the firewood is an essential requirement to warm up the room, to cook and to furnish even their homes also. So it is required in many major examples wherein which we need the wood as a source of fire, as a source of fuel, as a source of construction, and as a source of even the food construction, food material preparation, etc. Now coming to the next point, as the industrial products also. We drink tea, we drink coffee, we take take up a lot of medicines, we take up a lot of things wherein which these industrial products are involved. And we say that these industrial products, being chemical in nature, they are generally derived from our plant sources only. So these particular section wherein which I am talking about, such as the plants, such as animals which are present in our biodiversity, are economically, are morally, are needed to our body, our system, our ecosystem, our atmosphere. So since all these contents are regularly based for us, are called as narrowly utilitarian arguments. Here, more than 25% of the drugs are nothing but medicines, are derived from plants, and about 25,000 species of the plants are used by native people as the traditional medicine. Traditional medicine, I can go for an example called as Tulasi. Tulasi is a traditional medicine which is helpful for the clearing up of our throat. So I can give another example such as turmeric. Turmeric also is a general medicine used by so many people, not only traditional medicine. So it is even used in our milk. We can drink it as a turmeric milk. It acts as a immunity booster. It helps in deleting, it helps in destroying, it helps in killing the antigens present in our body. It helps in clarifying, it helps in soothing of our skin. So there are many more useful aspects of turmeric. Likewise, I can give you so many examples which are our narrowly utilitarian argument sections. Now, dear students, coming to next point, such as broadly utilitarian arguments, which are not only to the human being but to the entire atmosphere, are needed. Okay, coming to this section, let us enter into biodiversity plays a major role in maintaining and sustaining supply of goods and services. And if I think about what are those services which are provided by the biodiversity, let us go into those things. First thing, that Amazon forest is estimated to contribute around 20% of the total oxygen in the atmosphere on the earth. It is quite interesting to understand that out of the entire oxygen which is present in our planet earth, majority or one fifth of the oxygen is given by our Amazon forest. But because of our own selfish activities, if we start deleting these particular trees, if we start doing deforestation, there might be conditions wherein which we don't get much amount of oxygen to our lives. So that's why this particular topic is broadly useful. This particular topic is heavily discussed and argued. Some ecosystems wherein which the provision of pollinators like bees, birds and bats which pollinate plants to form fruits and seeds. So many of gymno and angiosperms are completely depending upon the pollination work. So 100% of angiosperms are dependent on pollination, which is nothing but the process of entering of the pollen grains onto the surface of the stigma and the further production of the pollen tube, and from which the fertilization, and from which the zygote, embryo and monocot and dicot products will be formed. Whatever these products are forming up, we are completely dependent on them. And since we are dependent on these things as a sources of our day-to-day activities as a food, these are present in almost all the places of our planet Earth, and depending on these, there are so many organisms which are still surviving. Right? So there are pollinators such as bees, birds, bats, etc. And if we start killing them, if we start deleting the plants, if we totally deforest, or if we totally ignore the nature of these plants and etc., there will be less pollinators, and if these pollinators are less, then there will be no process of production of the reproduction in the plants, and no process of production of food also. So this is a broad and huge utilitarian argument. Coming to some other points such as aesthetic pleasures like bird watching, spring flowers in the full bloom, walking through the thick forest, walking up to a bulbul's song. See, these points you may laugh at a little, you may think that these are not necessary, you may think that this is not essential, but in reality, these particular things play a major role in creation of that soothing atmosphere, in creation of that complete built-up area of oxygen, in creation of that internal satisfaction. These points are not our day-to-day basis, these points our must and should be discussed in a broadly argumental way, because we utilize them in a broad sense. Okay, that's why these are called as broadly utilitarian arguments. Coming to the third section called as ethical reasons. This section tells us that no one is useless. Right? There are so many plants and there are so many animals, and even there are so many microorganisms. Out of so many plants, we cannot say that all the plants are useless. We cannot say that all the animals are useless, and we cannot say that all the microbes are useless. Each and every organism is created in this planet Earth for its own specific reason. And we should not have to take into consideration that since these are used less, these are useless. So we need to understand that these are all the very important sections, and we need to understand them and respect them. Everyone has their own some internal value, even if it is not of any economic value to us. So it is therefore our moral duty to ensure well-being of this nature, well-being of the plants which are present in this nature, well-being of the animals which are present in this nature, well-being and the perfect utilization of the microbes which are present in this nature. Dear students, I hope you are understanding these basic reasons. The reasons which are needed to conserve our biodiversity. The first one as the narrowly utilitarian, second one as the broadly utilitarian, and the third one as the ethical reasons. Now, coming to the next point called as conservation of our biodiversity. How can we conserve it? So in the narrow way and in the broad way and in ethical way, we understood these are all the things, but how actually the human is waking up, how actually the human is thinking that I can save this nature. Okay, so the topic includes so many examples and so many numbers to consider and so many things to remember. Okay, so it is our responsibility as being a NEET student that we should have to remember these numbers, and these are essentials. Once again, I'm telling you. Now coming to the section called as conservation of biodiversity, it is divided into two sections. First one as in situ conservation, second one as ex situ conservation. Let me repeat it, students. First one as in situ conservation, second one as ex situ conservation. In situ, what do you mean by in situ conservation? Understand that there is one tiger, and that tiger has got its own gang, its own family and its own group, wherein which so many tiger families are there, and they are present in one of the forest. Because of humans' selfish activities, these tigers are being hunted down and the humans are killing them, and their number is decreasing like anything. Now some other humans which are curious to help the nature understood this fact, Now they want to help this killing of the tigers, right? It means that they want to stop the killing of the tigers. What they want to do, that they should have to preserve, they want to preserve the natural habitat of that particular tiger, so that in the natural atmosphere only, in that particular area only, these humans make some arrangements, so that make some rules, so that the hunters won't go there, hunters won't kill them, so that these can reproduce easily, so that these can reproduce and having a number of once again their own family members, so that once again their family concentration increases. So protection of the species in their natural habitat, it may be saving the camel in the desert, it may be saving a penguin in its own Arctic region or polar region, or it may be saving a tiger in its own natural habitat, is called as the in situ conservation, and it has got another name called as on-site conservation. In that particular place only humans will go and they will save about it. So it has got some points, and what are those points? Let us understand them one by one and we'll finalize it. First one is biodiversity hotspots. So what are these hotspots? So generally the meaning of hotspot is that it is the place wherein which big number of species are present, not in size but in the quantity. There will be variety of species present in it. There will be different sections of species depending on one another onto the biodiversity and biolife and the nature and the atmosphere. But we can see not only 1 or 2 3 or 4, we can see many number of species which are restricted, which are present in that area. We call them as hotspots, right? Don't consider hotspot as hot being increased in temperature, spot being a place. No, it is not a place which is hot in nature. No, it is a place where in which big number, huge number, more number of species are present. Here we get one word called as, one word which is called as endemism. Please mark this point as neat important point. This word is called as endemism. Okay, so what is the meaning of endemism, right? There will be so many times, and it has already been asked in our theory examinations and in our NEET examinations also about endemism. Some species are restricted to their natural places. They will not leave those places. So such as an example called as the penguin. Penguin has got its own limitation, that it can live only in the minus degrees. If you want to remove the penguin from its place, it's not possible to remove it and make separate of its own natural contents. So up to a certain limit you can make it, but highly 100% naturally you cannot do. So those organisms, if they come to our place like in Jamkhandi, they will die off, right? It is a common sense thing, right? So those species which are technically, which are naturally restricted to their own place is called as the endemic organisms or endemism. So endemic species are the species confined to only to a limited region. They will not come outside. So if we consider about the entire world, there are about 34 hotspots. Some examples in India, there are 3 hotspots such as the Western Ghats, Sri Lanka, Indo-Burma, Himalaya. Dear students, you have to underline them, remember them. These are examples, sir. So in case of examples, it's not possible to explain it. These are examples. Okay, so you should be keeping these things in the mind. Western Ghats in Sri Lanka, Indo-Burma and Himalaya, and these reduced the mass extinction by 30%. What is the meaning of this? This is one of the important point that we need to understand. What is the 30% reduction of mass extinction? It means that in these places Since these organisms are restricted, we can say that they will not at all go here and there, no one will kill them, and even the sustainability of the life is present there only, so which is good only. So in India, not only in India, there should be so many places where in which the hotspots should be there. Now coming to the next point called as the protected areas. So in India there are 14 biosphere reserves, 90 national parks, and 448 wildlife sanctuaries. All these are, remember, the number has been asked in the examinations about biosphere reserves, national parks, wildlife sanctuaries. Remember, all these things are in situ, in preparing them, protecting them in their natural habitat. We need to remember 14, 90 and 448. So in India there is an example called as Jim Corbett National Park, was the first to be established in India. We need to remember it. This is one of the example once again. Coming to next thing called as sacred groves. One thing, there were so many movies onto it, but still we need to understand that sacred groves. Sacred, there are some people. These people, they stay in the forest. They think that forest is their god or goddess. They believe the forest, they worship the forest, they create their own gods in the forest, and they follow the rules of the nature as the rules of the god, as the rules of the forest. What am I trying to tell here is that their whole and soul belief will be onto the forest and its products. So sacred groves are those places where in which those forest people will think that understanding the forest is understanding their mother, understanding the forest is understanding their god, and in the places where in which people worship the forest, people worship the land, people worship the soil, people worship those organisms, and in those places it's highly impossible for anyone to kill the organisms for their selfish purposes. So sacred groves are nothing but some forest places which are set aside for worship. Okay, now large number of rare and threatened plants can be found in these regions because no one is there to loot it, no one is there to hunt it, no one is there to steal it. Some examples once again: Khasi and Jaintia hills in Meghalaya, Western Ghat regions of Karnataka and Maharashtra, Aravali hills of Rajasthan, Sarguja, Chandra and Bustar areas of Madhya Pradesh. Once again, I'm telling you, there is no need of explanation of these things. These are remember purpose and we need to remember it, right? So, and once again, it's been asked in the examinations, right? Coming to next section called as ex situ conservation. Previously we studied about in situ. In situ means saving, protecting the organisms in their natural places, but ex situ means creation of an artificial place, right? So artificial place means the human made place. If the penguin wants to stay in Jamkhandi, then the human only creates its own natural like place. He creates the atmosphere in such a way that it gets the natural temperature which is less than 0 or in the minus concentrations, so that the organism can survive. They will provide the food, natural food, whatever that it eats in its natural place. Likewise they give in these areas. So these are man-made artificial places, bringing those animals to us, and in these places only saving them, protecting them, making them able to reproduce and increasing their concentration, sizes of the families, etc., etc. So this is called as the approach involving the placing threatened animals and plants in the special care units for their protection. India has got 35 botanical gardens, 275 ecological parks. Remember, botanical garden, ecological park come under ex situ conservation. Rest come under in situ conservation. Okay, so there is one word, dear students, called as cryopreservation. I've been telling this thing for many a times in my class. Cryopreservation, this is one of the method we studied in chapter number 1 and even in first year also, that it is nothing but saving the specimens, saving the samples of sperm, of egg under lowest temperatures in the form of powder, if you think, preserving the sperm, preserving the egg in the lowest degree possible temperatures. Here, the cryopreservation involves saving these samples at minus 196 degree Celsius. I repeat, protecting these specimens under minus 196 degree Celsius is called as cryopreservation. Some examples such as the gene banks, seed banks, etc., etc. So some even undergo the biotechnology processes also called as micropropagation. Here also in the laboratories we take up the use of plant tissue culture and we grow them in the laboratory only. So it is the desirable approach where urgent measures to save the extinction of the organisms are done here. Okay, so dear students, I hope you are understanding with respect to this particular concept called as how can we conserve the nature or the biodiversity. We studied about two things called as in situ and ex situ. In situ is nothing but protecting the organisms in their natural habitat, and ex situ is nothing but protecting the organisms by creating an artificial atmosphere so that the organisms can come and stay, so that the human can do experiments like reproduction and other aspects so that to increase their family numbers. Coming to the last concept of this chapter, that is conventions on biodiversity. Conventions in Kannada, it says that Sammelana, Samarambha, Charche, discussions, etc., etc. Right, so in case of conventions being the last topic, let me tell you, there was one particular meeting or convention happened called as the Earth Summit. Underline this one, write down this one, Earth Summit, EARTH, Earth Summit. Right, it was held in Rio de Janeiro in 1992. It is in Brazil. Rio de Janeiro is in Brazil. It was happened in 1992 and the discussion name was about Earth Summit, which called up on all the nations, and in all the nations they discussed about the atmosphere is being polluted. There is a deletion or destruction of so many biodiversity or life forms. How can we save them? How can we conserve them? What kind of measures can we take to save these organisms? Okay, coming to the next section, that World Summit. Underline this one also, World Summit. And it was on a topic called as sustainable development, natural regrowth, recyclable development. It happened in Johannesburg, which is in South Africa, and it took place in 2002. During this discussion, 190 countries participated. I repeat, first one was Earth Summit, second one was World Summit. First one, Earth Summit, was held in Rio de Janeiro and second one was in Johannesburg. First one happened in Brazil and the second one happened in South Africa. So here also they discussed about biodiversity loss and how it can be preserved, how it can be conserved, how can we save the nature and the life forms. Some points which are not in our NCERT, such as Biodiversity Act of India. Underline this one, write this one. Biodiversity Act of India. In India, it got created in the year 2002. Presently, India has got 14 biosphere reserves, already discussed, 90 national parks, 448 wildlife sanctuaries, And 3, ecological hotspots. Done. We discussed all these things. Some points, some of the NEET books, you find it as WWF full form and MAB full form. WWF means World Wild Fund and MAB means the Man and Biosphere Program. You can observe one thing here, students, that from the beginning of this chapter, what and all I'm doing is just underlining majority of the topics. Is just I'm telling that these numbers you should remember, these numbers are important, these examples are important. So since this chapter is completely dependent on examples, we need to remember the numbers, years, we need to remember. There is no much points to explain. So that's why it is our duty to remember these things, responsibility to remember these things. It is our homework to remember these things. Okay, these questions have been asked and these play a major role in NEET examinations also. Okay, students, so I hope you understood this particular topic wherein which we discussed about 3 things. First thing, what are the reasons for the conserving biodiversity? How can we conserve the biodiversity? And the third one, what are the different discussions or conventions happened in the entire world on how to save the biodiversity? I hope you understood this topic. Once again, similar points. If you did not understand it, repeat the same video and again you watch it. If you get any doubts in understanding, please feel free to ask me at any time. Message me in the group so that I can easily answer you so that you can understand it. Okay, I'll once again come by taking another video of different chapter. That is a promise, and until that time, be safe and keep studying as always. God bless you all. Bye bye.